sometimes longer, and when he walked back in, his shirt dark and wet, his cheeks flushed, it was the most relaxed and content he'd ever looked. This was the 60s and early 70s. Nobody jogged then. It was a habit he'd formed in the Marine Corps, and when he ran down the road, people would shout from their lawns and ask if he needed any help. Where was he going? I had run with him once before when I was 8 years old. It was at our old house in the woods in New Hampshire, one with land to play on, a clear brook in the trees. It was a summer day when Mom and Pop were still married, and Pop had asked me and Jeb if we wanted to go with him. We said yes, though Jeb lost interest pretty quickly and walked back down the country road Pop and I kept running on. I lagged a few feet behind him, the sun on my face, sweat burning my eyes. At the 1 mile mark, he turned around and I followed him home where he left me and set back out on a longer run. But I'd run 2 miles, and when I stepped inside our cool, dark house, I yelled up the stairs to Mom, "I ran 2 miles with Daddy, Mom! I'm strong! I'm strong!" And I punched the wall and could feel the plaster and lath behind the wallpaper, though I had no words for them. Niall was twice that age and hadn't run since, and even though my feet hurt with each stride, it felt good to be running outside with Pop on his birthday, spending time with him that wasn't in a restaurant he couldn't afford on a Sunday, that wasn't in a small apartment every fourth Wednesday. It was easier not having to look directly at him across a table, to have him sometimes look directly at me, and this was a part of town I didn't even know about. For a while it was hard to believe it was the same town as the one I spent all my time in. We were running on a wide dirt trail under a canopy of leafy branches. To our left, the trees grew on a slope and leaned over the water. To our right was a steep wooded hill, the ground a bed of pine needles and moss-covered rock, deep green ferns growing up around fallen logs and bare branches. I was in weight training shape, not running shape, and 15 minutes into it I could hear myself breathing harder than he was. But I didn't let myself fall behind him, and I found if I relaxed my toes each time I lifted a foot, then tensed them just before it hit the ground again, the pain wasn't quite as sharp. I figured I'd have to do this another 30 minutes, maybe 45, just 2 or 3 times what we'd already done. I could do that, right? The trail dropped closer to the water, and for a 1/4 mile or so we were running on flat ground, water on both sides of us, marsh grass and lily pads and waterlogged trees that had been there for years. Then the hills came. They were short and steep, and Pop told me to run up them hard, that it was easier that way. I did, my heart punching my ribs, my breathing coming too shallow when I was inhaling as deeply as I could. Pop was 8 or 10 feet ahead of me now, and I put my head down, pumped my arms and legs, and tried to ignore the